I'm going to show you how to learn 100 new words per day in any language, in whatever language you learn it. All right? Learning vocabulary is really important in language learning because if you don't know the words, you won't be able to understand the language and you won't be able to speak it. So, learning a lot of vocabulary and learning it as fast as you can is extremely important. And every time I talk about this and say that you should learn more words per day, and I create a learning plan and say that you should memorize this many words per day, there are always people in the comments complaining about that being impossible. No, you can't learn 30 words a day. That's impossible. 5 words a day is the maximum you can learn. They always have an arbitrary number. Some people say that a word a day is already a lot to learn. Good luck with that. But they always seem to have an arbitrary number, and it always changes from person to person. That more than that is impossible for some reason. Humans are limited; they can't learn more than that. No, you can learn a lot of words very quickly if you do it right. Right, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So let's look at this verb list in French. These are French verbs from the most common to the least common verbs in French with an example sentence. I highly recommend starting with the verbs when you start learning vocab, and then so you learn a few hundred verbs or 2,000 verbs if you want. You learn the whole list with example sentences, and you learn adjectives as well, and finally nouns. Because even though nouns are important, they're much easier to learn in context. Verbs are the most important words in a sentence, in my opinion, and they're also much more flexible. The same verbs will be used in lots of different contexts, while nouns vary a lot depending on the context. If you're into one specific topic, you learn the nouns and some verbs as well of that topic, but uh, you'll also hear a lot of verbs like, I don't know, emphasize or complain or whatever. Like those verbs, you hear them in any subject. So, but at the same time, you don't hear them often enough. So you will need to learn them. So I recommend you start with the verbs. Anyway, back to learning words, as many words as possible. So how do you do it? You need basically two things: memorization with mnemonic associations, which I'm going to show you how to do right now. Um, and step two is a lot of reviewing. Now, reviewing is very easy. You've got the sentence list here, so you see the words in context, yeah, and you've got the meaning here as well. You learn some extra vocab in context by doing this, but the main vocab you're trying to learn is the one here, but then you got more vocab here. But anyway, reviewing is very easy. You just read the list, check the ones that okay, I don't understand this. You check, you keep reading from start to finish over and over. Only with the verbs you've already memorized with mnemonics. And you also take the audio files and you create a playlist with them and you binge listen to them every single day. Um, 1,000 sentences are more or less 1 hour of audio. So if you're learning 1,000 words per week, this is just an example. You could learn more, you could learn less, but if you're learning 1,000 words per week with 1,000 example sentences, that's an hour of audio. So you can listen to that 20 times in a week. So those 1,000 words with their example sentences, you can listen to them 20 times in a week. And if you've also been reading the list and you've been memorizing the words with mnemonics, there's no way you forget them. Okay, you forget some of them, maybe, but you'll remember most of them pretty easily. Yeah. So you need a lot of repetition, which is very easy if you just use example sentences and you binge listen to them, and then memorization with mnemonics, which is what you're here for. Most people struggle with this, so I'm about to explain it now. If you got bored during the 5 minutes of rambling I just did, you could have just clicked in the timestamp and come to this part straight away. So anyway, memorization with associations. how it works? Well, basically, we need to take the word, find something that sounds like the word, create a mental image for it, and then associate it with the meaning of the word. Obviously, the more languages you know, the easier this will get because you'll know more words. So you'll have more words that you can use that look like this or sound like this. So in this case, we'll get rid of the endings because they all sound like the R ending of the N or like the N ending of German verbs or the also R ending of the Spanish. We don't need that. So we'll take just the part that changes, right? So ET in this case, F, Av, whatever. It's good to work with the sound, how the word sounds, although you can use the spelling as well. And what we'll do is find something that sounds like that and create an association. For example, this to be, the verb to be, I like to, yeah, it's not that easy to visualize, right? How do you visualize the verb to be? For me, it's the, no, I'm not going to claim I've read anything by Shakespeare, but this is the famous thing, the guy talking to the school, uh, to be or not to be, whatever, like that guy. It's a Hamlet or something, I don't know. But yeah, I always use that, and I know that's the verb to be. If you can visualize a bee instead, the animal, and it works for you, great. But find an image that you can visualize. And then ET here, the extraterrestrial, the alien from the film, because we don't need the last R sound. Et, so et, ET. So visualize ET either being stung by a bee or doing the to be or not to be thing with the skull, or all of it at the same time. It's doing the thing and then it gets stung by a bee. And you have to actually visualize it. And then say that être, to be. And if you read the sentence aloud and il est toujours gentil avec ses amis, it's also good if you read it aloud. But that will come later with the reviewing. And you do this with all of them. And it can be a little bit difficult in the beginning to come up with things, but the more you do this, the easier it will get. You will not need to do it with absolutely all of them. Utiliser, to use. Yeah, easy. To aider, to aid, help. You don't need that either. Um, yeah, like obtain. We don't need that either. Sure, there's a lot of them that if they're cognates, they have the same roots in both languages, and this happens a lot with European languages. You don't need to do it. You just have to do it with the ones that look different. And it's once you get some practice with this, it gets very easy. What I recommend you do is set a timer every day, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and do as many of them as you can. And maybe do it 2 or 3 times a day, 10 minutes, and just do as many associations as possible. And maybe they won't be very good in the beginning, but the more you do it, the easier it will get, and the better they'll get. Right? And if you then reading and listening to the sentences, you remember a lot of the vocab very easily. For example, let's do a bunch more. Um, pouvoir. Elle peut parler 3 langues. This is to be able to. Oh, I mean, to can doesn't exist. To be able to. But she can speak 3 languages. So, what does this sound like? Pub for me. Like, pouvoir, pouv, pub. So, just visualize a British pub and visualize um, Brit who has to ask the missus for permission to be able to go to the pub. And visualize the whole scene. Deer, to say, just visualize a deer, the animal speaking. Yes, but the more cartoonish you do it, the better. Just uh, like like in the cartoons, like it's got like the speaking thing. Um, avoir, to have. This one's not very easy, but also it shows up all the time, so maybe you just don't need to visualize it. A lot of these, if they're a little bit more abstract, you can learn them uh, by repetition as well. Like créer, create, don't need to give, donner, don, like the Don, Donald Trump, or Don, like a mafia boss. Uh, yeah. Ale, this one's tricky to go, but allez, nous allons, il va, so uh, turns into something like that. So, but I mean, you learn that with other exercises. But this video is not about how to learn conjugations. There's a bunch of other exercises for that. But if it's one of those irregular verbs, what you can do is get the most common form, like ir in Spanish is yo voy, tú vas. In French is the same. Yeah, je vais, tu vas, and so on, without like that. So il va. So what you can do is create one for this and one for this, and we put them together. So go or go. I don't know how it's pronounced actually. The board game. I've never played it either, but there's a board game called Go. Uh, so we visualize that. Just Google it if you don't know what it is. And we visualize either Al Bundy or Al Capone, someone like that. We visualize that. And with a V, you can either, what's the film with the guys with the masks? V for Vendetta or something like that. You can visualize that. Or V, like V from Victory, like Winston Churchill doing with the cigar on the probably a bottle of whiskey and then doing the victory sign, the V. You can visualize Winston Churchill doing that, playing Go against Al Capone, Al Bundy. Al Bundy's funnier. And then Winston Churchill looks at you and does the sign, the victory sign, because he's winning. Yeah. And I just messed it up. Anyway, you see, it's pretty easy. You can do 20, 30, 50 of them in like 15 minutes, less than that, pretty quickly with some practice. And again, you don't need to do it with all of them. In fact, a lot of them, for a language like French, they're already relatively easy to like you comprendre. Yeah, you don't need to do it. Déterminer, demander, promouvoir. A lot of this, like establish. Okay, parler. Everyone knows this already, but if you have to, like visualize some pearls that are talking or something like that, reinforce, renforcer. For a lot of these, you don't have to, but for the ones you have to hold 10, what's something that sounds like 10, then hold, like a choke hold. And you can keep doing this all the way to 100. And like I said, 300 sentence audio file of this is 10 minutes of audio, more or less. So you can first learn 100 new ones with associations, except the ones that are look and sound similar to English. Yeah, control, a lot of them sound similar. And then just binge listen to the thing. Yeah. And for a more complicated language, you'll have to do more associations, but still, it's still doable. And in half an hour, you can create 100 of these associations with some practice. It's as simple as this. You just have to do it. So, long story short, create mnemonic associations, as many of them as you can every day. Treat it like a skill you need to practice. And I'm way faster than what I was doing here normally because normally I use Spanish and Basque, which are my native languages. If I use those video here as examples, you don't get the references because Maybe you speak Spanish, but probably you don't speak Basque. So yeah, if you speak a couple of languages, you'll get more words. And the more you do, the better you get at it. So you visualize, associate, move on to the next one, move on to the next one. You do it as fast as you can with a timer, so you get better and faster at it. And then just review it at the end of it. Just read the list and read the previous ones as well from previous days relatively quickly, and then just listen to the playlist of example sentences. And like I said, 1,000 sentences are an hour of audio, more or less. You can listen to that many times in a week, and if you keep reviewing it and you keep creating the memorization, the associations for new words, you very quickly learn hundreds and then thousands of words. That's it. That's what you need to do to learn lots of vocab quickly.